Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Justin, I'm from Australia, and I mainly make chess videos. Today I want to help beginners learn how to solve chess puzzles or problems. So I'll go over what are puzzles and why we should solve them, how to approach them, and I'll obviously do some examples. 4 in this video at 800 to 1000 difficulty level, and I'll go over what these numbers mean during the video. So puzzles are basically a position. When you hear the word puzzle, you can think of the word position, where you have to find the best move for a particular player, white or black. So you're told it's black to move. What's the best move for black? Usually it's a winning move, but sometimes it could be a drawing move. And why we should solve them? Well, I mean, it's quite obvious, hopefully, that when you're playing a chess game, you have to find the best move in the position continuously, right? And sometimes the best move is a winning move. So it's important to be able to recognize when that happens so that you can win the game. Otherwise, technically it's a draw. If both players play perfectly, or maybe if neither player sees the winning moves, it'll end in a draw, right? If you take all the pieces, king versus king is a draw. So how to approach them, I'll go over it mainly as we do the first example, because there is a process that strong players do automatically, subconsciously. But when you're starting out, it's important to do it meticulously, forcefully. Force yourself to go through the process so that it becomes a habit and then becomes subconscious. So here I am in chess.com and I've chosen this rating range here, 800 to 1000. Basically means maybe upper beginner, if that exists. I could set it even lower, but since I'm here to explain the positions and how to solve them, I think it's better to do slightly more complicated ones. Thus, they should still be fairly easy. And why not get started? So here we can see it tells us it's black to move. We're seeing the board from black's perspective. This is the 8th rank. You can see the number 8. So it's always important, first of all, to orientate yourself, meaning which way the pawns are going, basically. So we're going this way, and let's start the process. So the way most people learn, I guess, are with what's called forcing moves, which means a move that forces your opponent to respond, generally speaking. The most obvious being a check. If you check the opponent's king, meaning you attack it, they have to respond, either take, block, move, right? Take the checking piece, block the check, or move the king. The second forcing move is a capture. Usually when we capture something, they have to recapture. Not always, it's not forced technically, but generally speaking, you have to recapture. And the third is a threat or attack, which is a lot more tricky, and that's where the difference between playing strengths really shines through. But let's get started with the checks in the position. One other thing is it's always good practice to count material, right? So in this position, we've got a queen, a knight, and 2 rooks against a queen, 2 bishops, and a rook. So we're up material, technically, which is interesting. Let's get started with checks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 checks possible in the position. So a stronger player will know when to calculate the queen sacrifice and when not to. So this is a queen sacrifice because we take the rook with check, but we lose our queen. If we could follow up with another check and win the opponent's queen, for example, it might be worth considering. But I don't see it working. For example, we can give this check, but then they take our knight when the king moves again. So instead, let's start with this check, queen e1. This is the first rank. So A, B, C, D, E, 1. And now we calculate what white can do as a response, right? It's check. They have to either take, block, or move. They can't take the queen. Can they move the king? No, the king's boxed in by its own pieces. So the only option is to block. If they block with the rook, we then have to repeat the process. So it's a new position after queen e1, rook g1, and we go through the forcing moves again. Checks, captures, threats. Do we have another check in the position? Could be a new check, right? The position has changed. And yes, we have queen takes g1, and if it's checkmate, we stop. And it is. It's checkmate. So no point continuing. So this is a simple mate in 2. This move would lose the queen, obviously. It's protected, this square. And yeah, that's it. So hopefully you're able... okay, I forgot to mention that they can sacrifice the bishop to block. So technically it's mate in 3. It's just giving away a piece to prolong the suffering. And checkmate. Okay. Number 2. So black to move. Again, material-wise, we're down a rook. We don't have a rook. Queen and bishop versus queen, bishop, rook. Interesting position. Let's get started with the process. Checks, captures, and threats. How many checks in the position? It's something I always like to ask beginners. Even if they're silly checks, you have to be able to recognize all the checks. May sound strange, but it's very important because sometimes strange looking checks are actually good. It's important to recognize all of them. So we've got 1, 2, 3. 3 in this position. Again, the queen sacrifice doesn't lead anywhere. We'd have 1 follow-up check. Bishop takes c4, but then king moves and we're down a queen, right? So instead, let's try these 2. They're both very similar, except this one, watch out for the attacking, the defending. The other player also has pieces, right? So you don't want to give away our queen, which means this check is the only serious one to consider. White has not many options, right? Take, block, move. They can't take, they can't move. They have to block. And in the new position, we look for checks, right? The same process as always. You'll probably get sick of me saying it in all my videos, checks, captures, threats, but up until the highest level, that's what you have to focus on to improve. I mean, for most levels, right? It all comes down to who's able to calculate more, but mainly who recognizes or can see all the checks, captures, and threats in every position. So here, hopefully you've seen bishop takes c4 now works. Again, can't block. The rook can't block the check because it's already pinning. It's already being pinned by our queen. So if the rook were to move back, it would be illegal because that would be leaving the king in check from our queen, which is on d1. So this is after queen d1, rook e1, only legal move. Bishop takes c4. The rook can't block because it would be illegal. Can't take the bishop on c4. So white has to move the king. And again, we look for checks in the new position. And queen takes d1, e1, sorry, checkmate. So nice mate in 3. Okay, 2 more. Maybe for this one you can pause the video if you want to try and solve it yourself. It's white to move, so we're obviously going this way. Okay, so quick counter material, completely even. Checks, captures, threats. Even in the opening, this is sort of the opening. Black hasn't castled. They should have castled. Otherwise, if they had castled, this tactic wouldn't work. But hopefully you've seen the only position, the only check in the position, queen a4 check, and it's what's called a fork or double attack. Because we're attacking the king and the bishop. Black has to respond to the attack on the king, and it's difficult to save the bishop at the same time. Maybe in a different circumstance, the bishop could move and block the check, but here it's impossible. So after queen a4, the king has to move, or maybe they can block, but then we just take the bishop. So this is what's called an undefended piece. It's not defended. That's why we can take it. If it was defended with a pawn, if this pawn was back on b7, this wouldn't work because we'd be giving a check, and after black deals with the check, we can't take the bishop because it would be defended. So a strong player will notice all undefended pieces in the position. So now we're adding a layer, right? Not just noticing the checks, but also the undefended pieces. So, pretty simple. And one more, last one. So black to move. Quick counter material, 4 pieces still for all players. This is quite simple, building on what we've seen in the previous 3. Very similar to all 3, basically. Actually, the first 2 were checkmates. This is similar to the previous one, which is noticing the checks, noticing the undefended pieces. This rook isn't defended. It's always good to, when I was starting out, I forced myself to see all undefended pieces in the position and just highlight them mentally. Like this bishop on b2 is not defended, the rook is defended, and everything else is defended except this rook. And also do it for yourself to see which of your pieces aren't defended, because then you can try and foresee tactics for your opponent. By the way, these are called tactics, when you basically find moves that lead to a winning position, winning material or checkmate, obviously. So yeah, queen e4, check, and double attack, we win the rook. Obviously, maybe it's not so obvious, but when you're calculating, you should always make sure, you should always try and calculate an extra move. So maybe you saw this position in your mind, and you made sure that the queen doesn't get trapped. Because if this diagonal gets blocked, and if this pawn was protected, potentially the queen could get trapped, and then you'd have to see if that's the case and decide whether or not to enter into this variation. A variation is just a sequence of moves. And that's it. Don't forget to subscribe if you found this video useful. I might make more in future, maybe of the same difficulty, maybe a slightly more difficult. I do have other videos which I'll link in the description with puzzles for beginners, but I'm trying to remember if I made them in English. There should be a few, but I'll definitely make some more, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.